of over $100. When we were, I mean, it's a very special thing, but when we were doing announcements on the tubes, the Underground Railway, the metro in London, devotees would generally do 1,000 magazines a day each, and up to 2,000. And when the devotees in South Africa, I mean, this was back in the 70s, actually. And when the devotees in South Africa heard about it, they started getting on the buses and making announcements. Yeah. All right. Then one day, Krishna, one day shortly after Prabhupada's arrival, the landlord evicted the devotees from their place on Hollywood Boulevard. With no temple, the devotees moved to scattered locations throughout the city. As many evenings as possible, however, they would all gather in someone's garage, lent to them for the evening, and Srila Prabhupada would chant Hare Krishna with them and lecture. Then Prabhupada rented a former Christian church on La Cienega Boulevard. He introduced a more regulated deity worship and an increased Sunday love feast. Each week would bring a new, specially planned festival with a big feast and hundreds of guests. These new programs in Los Angeles encouraged Prabhupada, and he wanted to see them introduced in ISKCON centers throughout the world. Srila Prabhupada was planning to go to England, but first he wanted to visit his farm project in West Virginia, and he had also been promising the devotees in San Francisco he would attend their Rath Yatra festival in July. Are you cold? This traveling to establish and expand his ISKCON was alone enough to keep him busy. Yet he was also always meditating on his work of translating and commenting on Vedic literatures. In L.A., are you getting cold? She's getting cold. Yeah. Let's try it there. 28 to 29 is about the best. Okay, right. So, yes, in LA during December, Srila Prabhupada had begun the Nectar of Devotion, a summary study of Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The Nectar of Devotion would be a handbook for his disciples, elaborately explaining the science and practice of Bhakti Yoga. Simultaneous with the Nectar of Devotion, he had also begun Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a summary study of Srimad Bhagavatam's 10th canto. Can we help you?
Yes, I will just from Lalita.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Please. Very thoughtful. Right, so yes, a summary, Visiting the temple only on Sundays. He had spent most of his time at a small rented house on the outskirts of Beverly Hills, where he worked intensely on his two major literary projects. Prabhupada's most ambitious literary undertaking, the completion of Srimad Bhagavatam, was to be no less than 60 volumes. He had begun in India in 1959, and all along he'd been aware that he was attempting a gigantic task at an advanced age. Now Krishna was giving him opportunities both for writing Vedic literatures and for traveling, and he was working at an amazing pace. The force driving Prabhupada was the desire of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. As for how much time he had remaining to execute his mission, that was in Krishna's hands. Everything was up to Krishna. He would say, if Krishna wants to kill you, no one can save you. And if Krishna wants to save you, no one can kill you. Yet although Prabhupada was always in transcendental consciousness, beyond the effects of old age, he was aware that he didn't have many more years left. All along he had had the vision of a spiritual movement for all nations and cultures, and to establish this, he was racing against time. Srila Prabhupada's mood of urgency was the natural mood of the Vaishnav preacher, an ambition to engage everyone in loving service to Krishna. Without Krishna consciousness, the bewildered, conditioned souls of Kali Yuga were all heading for the horrible consequences of their sinful lives. Prabhupada's sense of urgency, therefore, was an expression of his compassion. He wanted to save the gross materialists who were blind to the existence of the soul. If they wasted their human life, they would suffer millions of years before getting another chance to awaken their Krishna consciousness and go back to Godhead. The heart attack Prabhupada had endured in 1967 had accelerated his mood of urgency. Although before the heart attack, he had often worked like a young man and played the drum for hours. Now Krishna's warning was clear. The heart attack was to have been the time of his death. The heart attack was to have been the time of his death, Prabhupada had said. But because his disciples had prayed, our master has not finished his work. Please protect him. Krishna had spared him. Similarly, on the boat to America in 1965, his heart had almost failed. But then also, Krishna had saved his life. The scope of Prabhupada's work was enormous. Even with many years and good health, he could never finish. Prabhupada saw that in future generations, many people would come forward to help, and thus, by a combined effort, the Krishna consciousness movement would continue to check the forces of Kali Yuga and save the entire world. Caitanya Mahaprabhu had predicted this, and Prabhupada knew that it must come to pass. But the task of erecting the framework for this universal effort rested on Prabhupada alone. And he worked tirelessly, knowing that unless he established a complete foundation, the entire mission might later collapse. Beginning with Prabhupada's first success in New York City in 1966, Krishna had shown unlimited opportunities for spreading Krishna consciousness. But how much time was there? Only Krishna could say. It was up to him. Prabhupada remained ever mindful of the vast scope of his mission and the ever-narrowing span of time he had in which to complete it. I am an old man, he often told his disciples. I could pass away at any moment. Srila Prabhupada would receive several letters a week from the devotees in London. It was now December 1968. The devotees had been in London 4 months, and still they had no temple, nor even a place where they could live and worship together. Mostly they had been visiting Hindu families, holding kirtan and sharing prasadam. Srila Prabhupada had encouraged this, but after hearing a few reports, he decided the program was stagnant. The devotees should not expect much from the Hindus, he said. Quote, they have become hodgepodge due to so many years of subjugation by foreigners and have lost their own culture. I'm concerned to preach this gospel amongst the Europeans and Americans. The devotees were jolted, but they knew Prabhupada was right. Determined to change their tactics, they immediately began lecturing at colleges and universities and chanting in the streets. They were preaching to the British, and it felt right. When they wrote to Prabhupada that although they had accomplished little, they were planting seeds, Prabhupada replied, quote, regarding your analogy of sowing Krishna-conscious seeds, I may inform you that there's a Bengali proverb, Sabure Mayaya Pale. This means that fruits like chestnuts and pomegranates or similar other valuable fruits and nuts take some time to be fructified. So any good thing comes into our possession after hard struggle and endeavor. So Krishna consciousness is the greatest of all good fruits. We must therefore have necessary endurance and enthusiasm to get the result. We shall never be disappointed when things are presented in reversed order. I think it means when there are setbacks. Anyway, your honest labor is now coming to be fructified. Always depend upon Krishna and go on working with enthusiasm, patience, and conviction. Through the spring and summer of 1969, time's moving on, Prabhupada continued touring his American ISKCON centers. From Los Angeles, he had sent Gaura Sundar and Govinda Dasi, a young married couple, to Hawaii. And on their invitation, he had come during the mango season. Okay. But when he got there in March, he found that it was not mango season and that his disciples had accomplished little. They had taken jobs and were working full time just to support themselves. New York City, April the 9th, 1969. Prabhupada traveled to New York City, the birthplace of his Krishna Consciousness Society, where his movement had been growing for nearly 3 years. Although the center was established and his books were being distributed, he still had to visit to strengthen the devotees. His presence gave them determination and courage. For 7 months, they had carried on without his personal touch. But his visits, when he would sit in his room and reciprocate warmly with them, were vital. Nothing could equal these intimate meetings. Many devotees, old and new, crowded into Prabhupada's apartment at 26 2nd Avenue. There was one reporter for the Honolulu Advertiser, Prabhupada said. He was putting questions to me. And then he wrote an article with the title, "The Swami is a small man, but he is delivering a great message. That is true. I am small, but the message, that is not small." Prabhupada was short. I know what you'd say. 5'4", maybe. What, you know what your height is?
Maybe
5'6". Okay, so he was about your height or possibly a little shorter. So, yes, Brahmananda showed Prabhupada a globe with markers representing ISKCON centers. Now there is one in North Carolina, Brahmananda said. Then it becomes 15, Prabhupada asked. He was smiling and looking directly from one devotee to another. I want each of you to go and start a center. What is the difficulty? Take one mridanga. Then another person will come and join you. He will take kartals. When I came here, Brahmananda and Achyutananda were dancing. And after chanting, hundreds of men will come to your storefront and enjoy chanting and dancing. The girls also? Rukmini asked. There is no harm, Prabhupada said. Krishna does not make distinction, female dress or male dress. I mean to say the female body is weaker, but spiritually the body does not matter. In the absence of Lord Nityananda, his wife, Janavadevi, was preaching. First you must understand the philosophy. You must be prepared to answer questions. Krishna will give you intelligence. Just like I was not prepared to answer all these questions, but Krishna gives intelligence. After 8 days in his New York City home, Prabhupada went to Buffalo. At State University of New York at Buffalo, Rupanuga was teaching an accredited course in Krishna Yoga with some 60 students enrolled, regularly chanting the Hare Krishna mantra on beads. Prabhupada stayed for a few days, lecturing and initiating disciples. Then he went to Boston for more initiations and several marriages. Columbus, Ohio, May the 9th, 1969. The devotees had arranged for Prabhupada and Allen Ginsberg to chant on stage at Ohio State University. Allen had been a friend of the Krishna consciousness movement from its first days on the Lower East Side. Shortly after Prabhupada's arrival in Columbus, he stopped by Prabhupada's house and discussed philosophy with Prabhupada for several hours. Actually at that time, because the Beatles had not, George Harrison particularly, but the Beatles had not got into Krishna consciousness yet. So Allen Ginsberg was the most famous person who was involved in Krishna consciousness in the world. Yeah, Allen Ginsberg was really a very prominent person in those days. Allen was friendly with Prabhupada as always, but he doubted whether Krishna consciousness could become popular in America. The need, he said, is for a large, single, unifying religious movement in America. So here is Krishna, Prabhupada replied, all attractive. Now you can say, why shall I accept Krishna? But since you ask for a unifying element, then I say, here is Krishna. Now you can analyze. Why should you accept Krishna? And I shall reply, why you shall not. Whatever you want or expect from the Supreme or unifying, everything is there in Krishna. If Prabhupada wanted his movement popularized, Allen suggested, he should consider omitting many of the sectarian Hindu aspects, such as the dress, the food, and the Sanskrit. Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada replied, was not sectarian or Hindu. Lord Caitanya had said that a person could chant any name of God, but one must chant. As for food, Prabhupada explained that any food was acceptable as long as it was purely vegetarian. And dress, there was no stricture that Americans wear robes and shave their heads. The Hare Krishna mantra, Prabhupada added, was a natural sound, not foreign. And actually we see, about food, that if you travel around to places which have food cultures, and if you've traveled around, you'll see the devotees cook in that style often. In Italy, they have prasadam, Italian style. And you know what? It was Madhu Sevata Prabhu, who's one of the GBCs for Italy, what he said. Some of you have definitely heard this, but it's a really good one. He raised the question, what is pizza? What is it? What is pizza? And then he answered, pizza is a self-realized chapati or roti. That's a good one. You know, we do pizza here. I mean, and some devotees can do it. Some devotees can do it very nicely, but not so many. And we do pasta and, you know, but that's kind of ordinary. But, you know, some really nice Italian ravioli. Anyway, we will not talk about it too much. But like England, they don't have a food culture. I mean, they have, but it's not really a culture. It's just very, very simple. In Russia, they have a food culture of a sort. Potatoes, carrots, and cabbage. I mean, it's not quite that bad, but borscht, did you ever have borscht? It's really nice. But what you must try, if someone can get it together, is in Russian, kartoffel po-derevensky. Means village-styled potatoes. And it's really nice. It's amazing. Yeah. Okay. Right. The Hare Krishna mantra Prabhupada added was a natural sound, not foreign. Alan objected. The Hare Krishna mantra sounded foreign. Perhaps they should think of an alternative, more American mantra. This is going on, Prabhupada replied. Some people are inclined to one thing and some to others. And it will go on until the end of creation. But our position is that we're searching after the center. And here is the center. At Ohio State's Hitchcock Hall, 1,000 students occupied the seats. And 1,000 more crowded the aisles and the stage. The program began with a kirtan led by Allen Ginsberg. Allen then introduced Prabhupada and Prabhupada lectured. When Prabhupada began the second and final kirtan of the evening, the students responded wildly. Those seated stood and danced, some jumping in their seats, and those in the aisles and on the stage also joined in. Amid the thunderous kirtan of nearly 2,000 voices, Prabhupada began to dance, jumping up and down on the speaker's dais, his hands raised high. He threw flowers from his garland, and the students scrambled for them. The wildly ecstatic kirtan continued for almost an hour, and then Prabhupada brought it to a close. Afterward, hundreds of students crowded close around Prabhupada, asking him questions. Many students continued to chant as they left the hall, and some left crying from the new sensations of spiritual happiness. The next day, the ecstatic night of chanting at Hitchcock Hall was the talk of the campus. Prabhupada was pleased with the evening, and he described the event in a letter to devotees in Los Angeles. Quote, "Yesterday at the Ohio State University, we had a tremendous meeting, and nearly 2,000 students were dancing, clapping, and chanting along with us. So it is clear that the student community has a nice potential for accepting this philosophy. Okay, devotees, we will continue tomorrow evening. Hare Krishna. Oh, any comments or questions? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you. It was okay. It was borderline, but it was okay. Yeah.
29 for you is
No, it gets too hot. So you got to change it. Yeah. Bit odd. Yes.
Can we bring fans in here?
No, you can't. Hare Krishna.